Hello everyone, my name is Jesse Burke. This is my first video, basically ever. I have many areas of interest. Most academic disciplines interest me, in humanities, in social sciences, in exact sciences, and many others. I have other interests. I like TikTok, I like following the Hype House with Charlie and Dixie and Anderson, and other interests as you shall see. Today, one of my interests is delivering workshops in issues related to law and government and human rights. And today I would like to start with one that deals with the freedom of expression or free speech, known in the United States of America as part of the Fifth Amendment of the Bill of Rights. The Constitution has many amendments. The first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. And the Fifth Amendment deals with freedom of speech. But of course, the idea of freedom of expression and free speech exists in basically all democracies and republics, and we shall discuss it today. And the first question I often ask people is, do you believe in free speech? And often the answer is yes, of course. We believe in freedom of expression. We don't believe in dictatorship. And then I say, okay, well, let's check that. Let's check examples. And then I start reading out examples, and I shall do that now. Now I have these two containers near me. One stands for allowed, okay, permitted, and one stands for prohibited or forbidden, okay? If you look closely, you see the words here actually in Arabic, masmuh and mamnu', but they mean that. Why they're in Arabic? Just because I give this workshop in several languages, among them Arabic, and so that is the words I have here. And now I shall start with the examples, and I would like you at home to try and see, do I think this example is allowed? Meaning, I don't necessarily agree with what is going on, with what is expressed. I may find it immoral or wrong, but I think that the law should allow it. Or rather, I think the law should not allow it, prohibit it. That means I think the police should come and actually question someone who expresses himself in that way. And the first example I'll say is if we're talking about a demonstration and someone is burning tires and blocking the roads or the streets during this demonstration. I want you guys to vote. Do you think that should be allowed? Even if you disagree, you think that's within the idea of freedom of expression or prohibited? Okay, now since I don't see your examples at home, I would say that in most cases what I find is that this is the vote among different kind of groups. Okay, now what is the difference between freedom of expression and free speech? Free speech, as obviously as I'm sure you guys know, is only one way of expression. There are other ways of expression. For example, this person is blocking the street and burning tires in order to express himself. The question is this allowed? Is this okay, this kind of expression, or no? Because if I want to express myself by taking a gun and threatening someone, most democracies say, well, no, that's not within any kind of freedom of expression. The second example I will give is a mother wants to read in the personal diary of a daughter who she is worried is suicidal. Okay? So if in the first example we gave, what stood, the two sides were the right to demonstrate, it's part of freedom of expression. And on the other side, we had the idea of freedom of movement, of the vehicles who want to move through. And of course, the security, peace and security of the people. Here, what we have is, on the one hand, we have, of course, the right for privacy. Yeah, it's a personal, it's the daughter's personal diary. And perhaps even the right of possession. And on the other hand, there's the issue of the right for peace and security, right? Which is risky here because the mother is worried that her teenage daughter, let's say she's an adolescent, is suicidal. So shall we permit it because it may perhaps save life? Or shall we say, no, but every teenage daughter may be prone to suicidal thoughts. And how can we permit that? Often here I see both two sides. If they believe that the daughter is suicidal or there is a real risk, most will again vote to permit it, to let the mother look because she is suicidal. And when I say, what if she's not sure? And this question really comes up at the time now. Now when we're almost worldwide going through this idea of a coronavirus, COVID-19, we have this issue where many a country are actually limiting the movement of its citizens. They're doing blockades, they're doing lockdowns, different kinds of quarantines, yes? Just to get the terms right, COVID-19, as you may know, is an acronym. CO stands for corona, V for the virus, and D is the disease. Coronavirus, that. And 19 is, of course, 2019, when it started developing in late 2019 in Wuhan, which is a city in the area of Hubei in China. So the idea of quarantine, of course, comes from the Italian. Quarantina, 40 is 40. Quarantina is 40 days. The way they would quarantine, probably already in the medieval ages, although I think the term only was coined in the 17th century, if I'm not mistaken, was for 40 days. As you know, plagues have been plaguing us since antiquity. There's the famous, the documented virus who gave us the documented pandemic, who has the most victims, as known, is the Black Plague, which was in the 14th century, mid-14th century, came in several ways, and killed somewhere between a third and a half of the European population. About a third, in places like the United Kingdom, was about half. To go back to what we're saying is, again, the question of freedom of movement. Is it okay to take when there's issues of peace and security? Other questions come up. What about elections or primaries? Should they be held? Because the idea of a right to vote and to be voted is important. Or should we say no? The security, the health comes before that. So these questions come up. Now I'd like to ask you what you think about if there's a game. I don't care if it's a football game, or a baseball game, or basketball, or soccer, or rugby, or Gaelic football, or Aussie rules footy, or any other game, okay? And on the barricades, some of the fans are yelling racist remarks. Do you guys think that should be allowed? Again, I do not support any racism. I do not support racial talk. I'm to some extent I'm pro-PC. To me, PC, politically correct, just means not to be an a-hole. If people prefer to be called one thing and not the other, please respect that. Like, as a moral issue, you ought to respect that. The question, of course, is, in this case, what I'm talking about is, what should the law intervene? Should the law be saying this is prohibited, this is forbidden? Okay, so in most cases, when I talk about if they call out, okay, let's give an example. We are in a game where there's two different countries and they're calling death to the, okay? There are racist calls, they're Hispanophobic, they're xenophobic. Hispanophobic means against Latino people, specifically from Spanish, not including the Portuguese, I guess. Xenophobic, meaning against Chinese people. They're Islamophobic, meaning against Muslim people, maybe perhaps Arabs in general. They're anti-Semitic, which in today's lingo means they're talking against Jews. Do you think they should be permitted, or we should prohibit it? And actually, after the game, the police should go and question all those people calling out those games. Most people would hold that that is inside, I think, the freedom of speech. Again, a lot depends where we're from. And that's important to know. There is a difference between, I'd say, in general, Europe, perhaps, to North America. And what do you think happened in Europe that may somewhat make them perhaps more cautious about freedom of speech than, for many years, American society? That may have been the Holocaust and the Second World War. That said, in America, things are complex because there is a complaint, especially among the more conservative right-wing Republican side of the politics, that in many campuses of colleges and universities around the US, there's a culture of PC which often would not prohibit people who they feel incite hatred speak. And various people, I think perhaps like Dave Rubin or Ben Shapiro, or Caitlin Bennett, Gun Girl, or and many others, have claimed that in certain universities, colleges, they could not speak, or at least they need severe protection to enable them to speak. And they say so that's a problem of freedom of speech. Anyway, I will assume for this case that we will allow these things, and I'll move to the next one. That is burning the flag. And I think in many, burning a flag, now which flag? Well, let's say in whatever country you are, the flag of your country. This is something that I don't recommend to do. I don't believe generally in burning flags. Even flags that are full of hatred, I'm not sure I would take the Nazi flag or any other flag and just burn it for the sake of burning it. But the question, of course, again, here is not moral or ethical, but actually, what do you think, you as a legislator, okay? If you belong to the parliament, to the House of Representatives, to a Senate, okay? To a lower house, to the House of Commons, House of Lords, again, depending on the country, but in your view, if you belong to the legislative branch of government, legislative body of your country, would you pass into law something that forbids and even incarcerates someone who burns the flag? And I think that in many cases people will want to defend it. They consider it part of patriotism. So I will put it here for the sake of. The next question I have is regarding showing on social media photos, immodest photos of someone else. Let me put up this scenario. Let's say we have a tabloid. For the sake of argument, let's say we're in the UK. We have a tabloid like The Sun or the Daily Mirror. It finds nude photos or semi-nude, okay, upper body nudity of women like Kate Middleton, Meghan Markle, princesses, and he has a celebrity, and they want to show it. We have here, okay, if till now we had issues of, well, we've discussed some of the issues we had before. I'll go to this. We have here impaired freedom of expression versus hurting someone's name and his honor. And there may even be issue here of harassment, sexual harassment, if you're showing photos of someone else. Most people here say no. Although you have to understand that for the newspaper who's advertising this could be their not only freedom of possession, if they own it. I mean, you could argue about how come they own the photos, but certain the idea of free commerce, the ability to make money, to work, that's an important right among the human rights of any democracy. But I'm putting a no because that's what we have. So far we have 3 versus 3. Of course, I'm doing the choosing. In all cases, when I give this workshop, I let my crowd vote, and I do not vote. The next one is graffiti. Let's talk about a teenager who wants to do graffiti on the walls of their school or on the walls of a country, of a city, inside a town. And we're talking about the authorities, if it's the school, principal, headmaster, headmistress, or the authority, the municipality, city hall, disagree. We're not talking about when it's permitted. When it's permitted, that's one thing. And then on the one hand, we have a freedom of expression. We all know some of the beautiful graffiti things we see. Many of us remember the Berlin Wall. versus the idea that this is obviously element of illegal because the other person it doesn't belong to me, right? I am sort of ruining a position of someone else. But most people find graffiti, especially if it's not a private house, someone else, it's something that they will allow, and therefore I'll put it here. The next example is belonging to a group which is labeled as a terrorist group or as a racist group. And I'm not talking about acting out acts of terrorism, but just belong to a group, whether it's Nazis or KKK or Muslim extreme group or any other. Most people feel like this is, because this is a problem here of the, the society's security, they feel like it overtakes the idea that you should let demonstrations, and many people say no. Often, sometimes it depends on what side of the political spectrum one is and where they feel the other group is. As you know, these terms sometimes are politicized. Most of what we call terror, we connect with extreme groups of Islam. But when we have acts of mass shooting by groups that are either far-right groups or others, we often don't label it terror, we call it something else. So that also is a bit an issue of terms. So many times people say, well, most terrorists are Muslim. And I think that is only true because of the way we define it. Perhaps if we define terrorism differently, we would find different results. Okay, so another example is doing a shortcut through a private entrance, no trespassing. Many people feel that, here, obviously, the right for privacy and of possession is more important than the so-called freedom of movement of someone else, and many times they will prohibit it. The next one is when one publishes a book, we're talking about countries and states where drugs are illegal, or the kinds of drugs which are illegal, because almost no country in the world lets all drugs legal. And someone says, if you have a possession of certain kind of drugs, if it's cocaine, heroin, LSD, ecstasy, crack, or even if we talk about Mary Jane or hashish, but in places where it's forbidden. And I show you, if you have it, I'm not telling you what to do, I show you how to insert it into biscuits. I'm giving you a recipe, okay? It's a recipe book, how to use drugs you already have, put into books. I'm not telling you to go against the law. I'm not citing against the law, perhaps I am. I just want to make money for the book I'm writing. Do I have freedom of expression for that? Many people feel that, yes, I do, and they would put it here. Okay, now let's say I know I am a TV anchor, or perhaps in social media, or some kind of pundit, or reporter, and I find out about a military action that will take place tomorrow. Okay? Let's take the idea of the killing of Qasem Soleimani. Killing of Qasem Soleimani, which was the basically the Iranian chief of staff. I heard about it the day before, and I want to say it, okay? And for the sake of this argument, let's say I am an American citizen, I work for the news, and I want to have a scoop. I want to take out breaking news before it happened. But of course, then I'm endangering the whole operation, And does that overcome the right of people to know and freedom of press? Most people feel that free press does not include this. Of course, it will again depend on how patriotic someone is, what country they belong to. But many people would say no and would like to put in here. I want to express that what I'm putting in yes or no are not my own private thoughts, not at all. But since I've given this workshop several years to quite diverse kind of groups in terms of race and religion, and I'm sort of averaging out in my mind what the answers were often were. Gay Pride Parade. Let's say I want to go to somewhere where is a very religious and holy place. Perhaps Mecca or Medina or Jerusalem, which is holy to at least 3 religions, perhaps more. And I want to have a big gray paper ride with semi-nudity and so on. Walking the streets. Seemingly, I'm hurting the feelings of a lot of religious people, of religions. But on the other hand, where is my right to demonstrate? Where's my freedom of expression? Again, this a lot depends on who the group is. To whom am I speaking? But I think many times people would say they would allow that. Interestingly enough, about 15 years after the Holocaust, neo-Nazis with full Nazi garb wanted to demonstrate in the streets of Skokie, which had many Holocaust survivors living there, and the court allowed it. It actually said the Holocaust survivors can shut their windows. They don't want to hear the calls of Sieg Heil and and Heil Hitler. So, yes, that was their decision. I'll give one expression. Let's talk about countries that have conscription, which means draft, which is compulsory. These things they have it in France, they have it in the state of Israel, they have it in other places. Of course, during wartime, they have it in many places. During the Great War, the First World War, the Second World War, a conscription was entitled in many, many countries, including in the Anglosphere. It wasn't all volunteering. And in places where you have, and I put up a website showing how you can dodge the army, how you can get rid of it. You can act like you're crazy. You can give different reasons. You can say you have bone spurs. That was during the conscription in Vietnam War. And I'm not telling them to do it. I'm just showing them how to do it if they want to. Is that incitement? Is that freedom of expression? Most people that I've encountered are patriotic and feel like that shouldn't be done, and they would put it in the no. And if we just use these examples, and I count, so I'd find 6 examples of permitted activity, and 7 of not permitted. It's fairly even out, but we still see